nation's infrastructure received an overall grade of D+ in a report card published this week by the American Society of Civil Engineers, the same grade the group issued in 2013.
Sacramento is built at the meeting point of two of California's most significant rivers, the Sacramento River and the American River. This puts a lot of pressure on our levees and our water systems.
Our community of Natomas faces a much higher flood risk than the rest of Sacramento due to its location behind an unreliable levee.
Natomas really is protected by levees completely surrounding the basins. A lot is at risk behind that engineered pile of soil that could be holding back a 20-foot tall wall of water.
We need to protect the delta and make sure that it remains a place. And it can't just be about water supply reliability. It has to be about conservation. It has to be about maximizing our groundwater resources.
Natomas has had several close calls with flooding in the past.
This is Natomas during the 1986 flood event, and you can see the water flow in the Sacramento River, and you can see large portions of the levee have washed away. This is happening because of both seepage and stability problems.
We saw the impact of not being protected in 1997, I believe it was, and flood control, of course, has become the major public safety issue in our region, and rightfully so.
Natomas isn't alone in facing issues with its water infrastructure. California as a whole has significant weaknesses in its water systems.
I know that in California alone, there are approximately 1,400 dams, and nearly half of those are designated as, quote, high hazard potential dams by state officials.
However, improving dam infrastructure would come with some downsides.
Environmentalists believe that, dams, too many dams, create an ecological hazard because then the rivers do not flow, and it affects fisheries in very significant ways. And so the environmental community largely believes we ought to invest more in conservation.
There are many proposed solutions to these water infrastructure issues.
We're building our infrastructure and improving our levees and our facilities to handle more extreme events of rain and runoff from upstream in the system.
Before I was mayor, I was president of the state senate from 2008 through 2014, and I was the author of the major water infrastructure package, which included the establishment of the Delta Stewardship Council, whose role was to balance water supply reliability and protecting the delta.
It's not just water infrastructure in Natomas that's an issue. A lot of the infrastructure throughout the United States is in very poor condition.
Major infrastructure problems are everywhere, right? It's not just for flood control features, but you got to think about roads and the transportation network and all the different things.
My Treasury Department and my Council of Economic Advisors have released our own study. And these reports confirm what any American can already tell you. Our infrastructure is woefully inefficient and it is outdated. For years, we have deferred tough decisions, and today our aging system of highways and byways, air routes and rail lines hinder our economic growth.
Other nations are going all in. As a percentage of our GDP, we invest less than half of what Russia does and less than 1/3 of what Western Europe does into their infrastructure.
Everywhere else, they're thinking big. They are creating jobs today, but they're also playing to win tomorrow.
One of the great challenges is to go to the voters in the entire country and ask them for billions of dollars in resources for infrastructure.
There are some downsides to investing in America's infrastructure. For example, Biden proposed to raise corporate taxes by $2 trillion over 15 years to fund his infrastructure plan. Another downside is that state and local governments are often spendthrift when the federal government is paying the bills. One more downside would be that the federal infrastructure subsidies discourage the states from moving facilities to the private sector where they would be better managed.
When it comes to the resources that are necessary in order to create the infrastructure around flood protection, requires significant investments from the federal government. The locals cannot foot it alone.
So our message to the president is clear. Invest in our future by rebuilding America's aging infrastructure. Strengthen our dams and levees to secure a safer and more resilient nation.
It should not take another collapsing bridge or a failing levee to shock us into action.